Semester first, Basic Economic Analysis, Session 5, Economic Policy, आर्थिक नीति. Meaning of economic policy. आर्थिक नीति अर्थ. An economic policy is a course of action that is intended to influence or control the behavior of the economy. So, what it means? It is the action that is taken by the authorities in order to influence how the economy works or how the economy behaves. Economic policy refers to the actions that governments take in the economic field. Any action that is taken by the government with regard to the economic activities is what is economic policy. Economic policies are typically implemented and administered by the government. So, it is only those authorities who are at the helm of the affairs take the initiatives of economic policies. Going ahead, when you speak about economic policies, what type of policies do we see? So, examples of economic policies include decisions made by the government about spending and taxation, that is with regard to ಸರ್ಕಾರದ ವೆಚ್ಚ ಮತ್ತು ಸರ್ಕಾರದ ತೆರಿಗೆ, ಸರ್ಕಾರದ ಆದಾಯ ಮತ್ತು ಸರ್ಕಾರದ ವೆಚ್ಚ, ಇದರ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಏನು ಸರ್ಕಾರ ನಿರ್ಣಯ ತಗೋತೈತಿ ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ನಾವು ಆರ್ಥಿಕ ನೀತಿ ಅಂತ ಕರಿತೀವಿ. ಇಟ್ ಮೇ ಬಿ ಆಲ್ಸೋ ವಿತ್ ರಿಗಾರ್ಡ್ ಟು the distribution of income from rich to poor, or it may be about the supply of money. ಹಣದ ಪೂರೈಕೆ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಇರಬಹುದು ಅಥವಾ ಆರ್ಥಿಕ ವ್ಯವಸ್ಥೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ಹಣ ಮತ್ತು ಆಸ್ತಿಯ ಅಸಮತೋಲನ ವಿಸ್ತರಣೆ ಆಗಿರಬಹುದು. Then the next is it covers the systems for setting interest rate. ಬಡ್ಡಿ ದರ ತೆರಿಗೆ, ಬಡ್ಡಿ ದರ ಎಷ್ಟು ಇರಬೇಕು, ಓಕೆ, ಸರ್ಕಾರದ ಮುಂಗಡ ಪತ್ರ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಇರ್ಬೋದು, ನಮ್ಮ ಲೇಬರ್ ಮಾರ್ಕೆಟ್ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಇರ್ಬೋದು, ಅಥವಾ ಇಟ್ ಮೇ ಬಿ ವಿತ್ ಎನಿ ಏರಿಯಾ ವೇರ್ ದ ಗೌರ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಫೀಲ್ಸ್ ದಟ್ ಇಟ್ ಈಸ್ ನೆಸೆಸರಿ ಟು ಇಂಟರ್ವೆನ್. Now, when you speak about economic policy, friends, there are different tools of economic policy. ಆರ್ಥಿಕ ನೀತಿಯ ಸಾಧನಗಳು. So, how the government enforces its policy? So, the entire realm of economic policies can be broadly divided into two structures. One is demand side management policies and the other is supply side policies. Now, what is this demand side policies? So, when I speak about demand side policies ಅಥವಾ ಬೇಡಿಕೆ ಬದಿಯ ನಿರ್ವಹಣಾ ನೀತಿಗಳು, demand side economics refers to Keynesian economists' belief that demand for goods and services drive economic activity. So, Keynesian ಅವ್ರ ಪ್ರಕಾರ ಅವ್ರು ಏನು ಹೇಳ್ತಾರೆ, ಓಕೆ, ಆರ್ಥಿಕ ವ್ಯವಸ್ಥೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ಬೇಡಿಕೆ ಹೆಚ್ಚಾಗಬೇಕಂದ್ರೆ ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಸರ್ಕಾರದ ಮುಖ್ಯ ಪಾತ್ರವಿದೆ. ಸೊ, ಡಿಮಾಂಡ್ ಸೈಡ್ ಎಕನಾಮಿಕ್ಸ್ have the belief that demand for goods and services improves the economic situation. A core characteristic of demand side economics is aggregate demand. ಸಮಗ್ರ ಬೇಡಿಕೆ ನಮ್ಮ ಆರ್ಥಿಕ ವ್ಯವಸ್ಥೆ ಒಂದು ಮುಖ್ಯ ಭಾಗವಾಗಿದೆ with regard to ಆರ್ಥಿಕ ಅಭಿವೃದ್ಧಿ. That is what is the main characteristic of demand side policies. So, what it says, government can generate demand for goods and services if people and businesses are unable to. So, whenever the people are facing the problem of income or the private investors are not willing to invest, then it is the government which can help to improve the demand conditions in the economy through its economic policy measures. So, demand side management policies have a short term impact on economic activity. So, ಅಲ್ಪಾವಧಿಯಲ್ಲಿ ಸರ್ಕಾರ ಏನೇನು ಮಾಡುತ್ತದೆ ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಆ ಎಲ್ಲ ನೀತಿಗಳು ಬೇಡಿಕೆಯ ಬದಿಯ ನಿರ್ವಹಣೆ ನೀತಿಗಳು ಆಗುತ್ತದೆ. So, when I speak about economic policy, friends, demand side management policies are related to stabilization policies. So, ಸ್ಥಿರತೆಯ ನೀತಿಗಳು, ಓಕೆ, ಆರ್ಥಿಕತೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ಯಾವ ಪ್ರಕಾರದ ಸ್ಥಿರತೆಯನ್ನು ತರಬೇಕು ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಸಂಬಂಧಪಟ್ಟಿದ್ದ ನೀತಿಗಳು ಬೇಡಿಕೆ ಬದಿಯ ನಿರ್ವಹಣೆ ನೀತಿಗಳು. So, here friends, the first one is fiscal policy, ಕೋಶೀಯ ನೀತಿ. So, when you speak about fiscal policy, it is one of the major policies that comes under demand side policies, and it is related to influence the short term effects on the economy. So, when I speak about fiscal policy, what it is? Fiscal policy is a policy wherein government uses its taxes and expenditure policy to produce desirable effects on income, output and employment, and avoid undesirable effects on income, output and employment. So, here When we speak about economic growth, when we speak about the welfare of the economy, it all depends upon three important things which are correlated to each other, and that is the income that is produced in the country, or it may be the output that is produced in the country, or it may be with regard to the quantum of employment. So, this thing, any policy which wants to improve or wants to produce desirable effects on income, employment and output, and avoid undesirable effects on income, employment, output, is what is fiscal policy. How does the government does this thing? So, fiscal policy, we can say it also refers to the use of government spending and tax policies to influence economic conditions. ಸರ್ಕಾರದ ವೆಚ್ಚ ಮತ್ತು ತೆರಿಗೆ ನೀತಿಗಳು ಏನಿದೆ, ಆ ಸರ್ಕಾರದ ತೆರಿಗೆ ಮತ್ತು ವೆಚ್ಚದ ನೀತಿಗಳಿಂದ ನಾವು ಆರ್ಥಿಕ ಅಭಿವೃದ್ಧಿ ಮಾಡಬಹುದು. ಸೊ ಇದಕ್ಕೆ ನಾವು ಕೋಶೀಯ ನೀತಿಗಳು ಅಂತ ಕರಿತೀವಿ. Fiscal policy is largely based on ideas from John Maynard Keynes, who argued governments could stabilize the business cycles and regulate economic output. So, macroeconomics, the father of modern macroeconomics, John Maynard Keynes, he has said that he has given more importance to fiscal policy, and fiscal policy is nothing but intervention of the government in all the aspects of the economy with regard to what should be the rate of tax, how much amount should be spent, whether the tax rate should be increased or decreased, whether the expenditure of the government should be increased or decreased. All these decisions taken by the government with regard to taxes, it may be direct and indirect taxes, or with regard to expenditure, it may be for developmental expenditure or non-development expenditure, it may be with regard to planned expenditure or non-planned expenditure. All these things comes under fiscal policy. Then the next is that comes under demand side management policies, or short run, having the short run impact on the economy, is monetary policy. So, the moment I say monetary policy, it is related to money. So, monetary policy is the macroeconomic policy laid down by the central bank. So, if fiscal policy is laid down by the Ministry of Finance, Finance Ministry, the monetary policy is taken care by the central government. It involves management of money supply, ಹಣದ ಪೂರೈಕೆ ಎಷ್ಟಿರಬೇಕು, ಇಂಟ್ರೆಸ್ಟ್ ರೇಟ್, ದಟ್ ಈಸ್ ಬಡ್ಡಿಯ ದರ ಎಷ್ಟಿರಬೇಕು, ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ಈಸ್ ದ ಡಿಮಾಂಡ್ ಸೈಡ್ ಎಕನಾಮಿಕ್ ಪಾಲಿಸಿ ಯೂಸ್ ಬೈ ದ ಗೌರ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಟು ಅಚೀವ್ ಮ್ಯಾಕ್ರೋ ಎಕನಾಮಿಕ್ ಆಬ್ಜೆಕ್ಟಿವ್ಸ್. ಯಾವ ಪ್ರಕಾರದ ಸಮಗ್ರ ಆರ್ಥಿಕ ವ್ಯವಸ್ಥೆಯ ಗುರಿಗಳು? ಒನ್ ಈಸ್ ಹಣದುಬ್ಬರದ ಪರಿಸ್ಥಿತಿ, ಅತಿ ಪ್ರಸರಣ ಅಥವಾ ಅನುಪ್ರಸರಣ, ಇಟ್ ಮೇ ಬಿ ವಿತ್ ರಿಗಾರ್ಡ್ ಟು ಕನ್ಸಂಪ್ಷನ್, ಓಕೆ, ಸಮಗ್ರ ಅನುಭೋಗ, ಇಟ್ ಮೇ ಬಿ ವಿತ್ ರಿಗಾರ್ಡ್ ಟು ಗ್ರೋತ್, ಆರ್ಥಿಕ ಅಭಿವೃದ್ಧಿ, or it may be with regard to liquidity in the money. Now, when we speak about this thing, the second part is ಪೂರೈಕೆ ಬದಿಯ ನೀತಿಗಳು, that is supply side policies. Supply side economics is relatively new term which came into use in the mid 1970s as a result of the failure of Keynesian demand side policies in the US economy, which led to stagflation. So, here it is said that supply side economics is a new term, but one thing to be noted over here, friends, supply side economics is the classical economics where JB Say said supply creates its own demand. You do not worry about the demand, you provide the goods, automatically people will demand that. That is what is the logic. So, macroeconomics, which the foundation which was laid by John Maynard Keynes, it failed terribly in 1970s when the US economy was facing stagflation. What is stagflation? A situation where inflation and unemployment both are increasing simultaneously. So, his aggregate demand and aggregate supply equilibrium, it did not work out, and that is the reason they had to find out a new alternative, and the new alternative was called as supply side economics. So, modern supply side economics lays emphasis on providing all types of economic incentives to increase aggregate supply in the economy. It is speaking about providing incentives to increase the production in the economy. So, supply side management policies have long run impact on economic activity. Now, coming to what are the things that comes under supply side policies. Supply side policies are related to structural adjustment policies, which include, so here we are having the first part, the second important issue, third and fourth. So, what is the first one, friends? The first one is, as you can see, it is related to industrial sector reforms, ಕೈಗಾರಿಕ ವಲಯದ ಸುಧಾರಣೆಗಳು. So, in this, friends, we speak about abolition of permit raj system, it speaks about giving more freedom to the industries, it speaks about reducing the hurdles of bureaucracy with regard to establishment of new industries, with regard to location of industries. All these things are taken care in industrial sector reforms. The second one is public sector reforms, ಸಾರ್ವಜನಿಕ ವಲಯದ ಸುಧಾರಣೆಗಳು. So, under public sector reforms, the major emphasis on privatization and disinvestment. Then the third one is financial sector reforms, which mainly deals with our banking sector reforms, which was majorly influenced by Narasimhan Committee report. So, under financial sector reforms, we speak about how the bank should be given autonomy, how the bank's interest rate should be deregularized with regard to expansion of bank, with regard to the location of the banks, with regard to investment of the foreign banks into Indian economy. All these things comes under financial sector reforms. And lastly, the fourth one is trade sector reforms, or also called as external sector reforms, ಬಾಹ್ಯ ವಲಯದ ಸುಧಾರಣೆಗಳು. Here we are speaking with regard to imports and exports, how there was liberalization with regard to imports, with regard to reduction in the quotas, reduction in the tariff rates, with regard to moving from liberalized exchange rate management system. It is with regard to FERA and FEMA, Foreign Exchange Regulation Act, then moving out from Foreign Exchange Regulation Act to Foreign Exchange Management Act. All these things comes under export sector reforms, or you can say external sector reform. So, these are the major areas of reforms which will be having long term impact. So, these reforms were brought into the picture in the new economic policy of India in 1991. So, 1991 onwards we could see the first generation of reforms. So, friends, to sum up, all these different reforms, different sector reforms includes something called as LPG policy, that is introduction of liberalization, privatization and globalization in all the above sectors is what is giving us the supply side policies which are having long term effect on the economy. Let us go ahead. So, when you speak about economic policy, why economic policy is needed, what are the goals of economic policy, ಆರ್ಥಿಕ ನೀತಿಯ ಗುರಿಗಳು ಏನಿದೆ. So, here friends, remember when we were speaking about this thing in the earlier classes where I told you about normative economics and positive economics, ಮಾದರಿ ಅರ್ಥವ್ಯವಸ್ಥೆ ಮತ್ತು ವಾಸ್ತವಿಕ ಆರ್ಥಿಕ ವ್ಯವಸ್ಥೆ, ಅರ್ಥಶಾಸ್ತ್ರ. So, here the goals of economic policy consist of value judgments about what economic policy should strive to achieve, and therefore falls under the heading of normative economics. Remember, when you speak about economic policy, it comes under how the thing should be, okay, what ought to be, that is what is economic policy. So, here many people are having disagreement with regard to what should be the goals of economic policy, but to a certain extent, if you sum up the things, we are having this particular widely accepted goals. One is economic growth, ಆರ್ಥಿಕ ಅಭಿವೃದ್ಧಿ, full employment, ಪೂರ್ಣ ಉದ್ಯೋಗ, and price stability, ಬೆಲೆಯ ಸ್ಥಿರತೆ. So, let us see briefly one by one what is this. So, the first one is economic growth, ಆರ್ಥಿಕ ಬೆಳವಣಿಗೆ. So, economic growth means that the incomes of all consumers and firms are increasing over a time. So, increase in GDP over a period of time is what is called as economic growth. So, what is the thing behind this? The basic objective of economic policy is to promote inclusive and sustainable growth. ಎಲ್ಲರದ ಆದಾಯ ಹೆಚ್ಚಾಗಬೇಕು ಮತ್ತು ಅದು ಏನು ಹೆಚ್ಚಾಗ್ತಾ ಇದೆ ಆದಾಯ ಅದು ಸುಸ್ಥಿರ ಇರಬೇಕು. That is, all the people's income should be included. ऐसे नहीं होना चाहिए कि only the rich people's income is included and the poor people's income is same or they are getting deteriorated, and ऐसे भी नहीं होना चाहिए कि this increase in income is for a short span. It should be continuous, it should be sustainable, and this growth should include all the sectors of the society, all the sections of the society. So, this is the first goal of economic policy. The second goal is Purna Udyoga. There should be no unemployment in the economy. That is what is the situation of full employment. The goal of full employment is that every member of the labor force who wants to work is able to find work. It is not only with regard to labor force, it is with regard to all the resources in the economy should be optimally utilized. That is the main goal of economic policy. Why it is so, friends? Because it is having its own social effects. Economic policy should lead to creation and expansion of jobs and livelihoods. इसके वजह से क्या होगा? Socially, what will happen? If people have employment, they can earn the income, and that will help them to come out of the vicious circle of poverty, and they will be able to fulfill their basic needs such as roti, kapda or makan. The third important goal of economic policy is there should be no inflation and there should be no deflation. That is, there should be price stability, beleya sthirate. So, friends, the goal of price stability is to prevent increase in general price level known as inflation, as well as decreases in the general price level, which is known as deflation. So, inflation as well as deflation both are harmful to the economy. So, the goal of economic policy is to prevent this particular price instability. So, how it will be done? I will tell you right now with regard to what is the role of the different policies. So, a quick recap. When we speak about economic policy, friends, as I said, we can divide this economic policy in two categories. One is, we can say it is demand side management policies, and the other is, which is also called as stabilization policies, and the other is supply side policies, which is called as structural adjustment policies. So, stabilization policies matlab if there is rise in price level or fall in price level, if there is increase in unemployment rate, if there is increase in fiscal deficit. So, these things require immediate action. So, this immediate action can be managed by managing the demand situation in the economy. For this particular purpose, friends, we are having with us two important policies. One is fiscal policy and the other is monetary policy. So, how to manage inflation and deflation? If there is inflation, the government uses its fiscal policies to increase the tax rate and decrease the government expenditure. On the other hand, if there is unemployment, the government will make use of its fiscal policy to improve the employment situation by going on for increasing autonomous expenditure. On the same time, monetary policy, as we know, it deals with supply of money. If there is increase in the supply of money, the rate of interest will decrease. If there is decrease in the supply of money, the rate of interest will increase. So, depending upon what the economy is going through, if they want to bring stability in the prices, they will go on for managing the supply of money, which in turn will protect the rate of interest. And on the other side, we are having something called a structural adjustment policies. So, structural matlab different sectors of the economy. It may be including such as industrial sector reforms, which targets with regard to liberalization, privatization and globalization in the industrial sector. Then the next one is public sector reforms, which speaks about reducing the role of the government in our industries and giving more opportunity to the private sector by bringing into disinvestment and privatization. Then the next is financial sector reforms, which aims at giving more autonomy to the banking sector, allowing private sector banks to open up, allowing the foreign banks to come into the Indian scenario. And then comes the external sector reforms, which speaks about how to globalize. How can we go on for globalization, reducing the restrictions in international trade, involving all the countries in multilateral trade agreements. All these things comes under external sector reform. And friends, as I said, all these things, when you speak, we can divide these policies as short run impact policies, that is demand side management policies, and supply side policies are having long run impact. So, this is how the economic policy is working. So, friends, economic policy plays a very important role in achieving the objectives that is set by the government. It may be short run objectives, medium term objectives and long term objectives with regard to economic achievements. So, with this, friends, I stop my class. So, friends, The books that I have referred is Indian Economics by Rudrathan K.P.M. Sundaram and by Ashwathappa.